What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 69 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I wanted to talk to you about Superman, Eradication. This is pretty much a straight-up sequel to Superman Exile. It's not as long as Superman Exile. It's like maybe half the length of that story, but it's got a lot of the same elements that Exile did, and it's following up on some of those subplots. For example, we get to briefly see the Cleric once again in flashback form, and we get a little bit more information on what was going on with him on Krypton. Mostly, it's just kind of recapping stuff that we found out in the Exile storyline, but we get a little bit of that. We get the Eradicator once again, which was an element that was introduced in the Exile storyline, and we also get to see Draga. He returns, and I will go ahead and say I wasn't extremely happy with Draga coming back. I kind of like the way his story ended in Exile. As I said in that video, it kind of reminded me of his appearance on the Justice League cartoon. Here, he's already the ruler of Warworld, thanks to the events of Exile, and he wants to come to Earth and have a rematch with Superman because he believes that Superman wronged him by not killing him. And I feel like that doesn't really need to happen. That's just kind of an excessive, extraneous part of his character arc. I feel like his character arc ended just fine in Exile, so I didn't really need to have Draga be back. And I feel like the only reason that he does come back is so that we can have more action stuff happening in this book. We also have Superman fighting Lobo for, I believe, the first time, and then that's pretty funny and amusing. Pretty much Lobo in this entire book, he's hilarious. I can take Lobo in small doses, but he's pretty funny here. I really like getting to see him meet Bibbo, which was really funny. And then we also get to see Superman briefly fight Maxima, and I feel like you could have stretched out the Maxima thing a little bit and replaced the Draga thing, or just have an entirely different villain fight Superman in the last third of this book instead of it being Draga. I really didn't need it to be Draga. Like I said, I felt like that was just an unnecessary part of his character arc. But this book does some interesting stuff that kind of plays into the Superman mythos in a big way, even on up until today. Like I said, the Eradicator is part of this book, and the Eradicator was just recently featured in the first storyline of Superman in the DC Rebirth. So this is kind of sort of the introduction of the Eradicator. In the Exile storyline, we get to see the item that becomes the Eradicator, but there, it's more of a plot device, while here, it's more of a character that actually is acting on the story and influencing the story. And you know that thing where we often see Superman becoming more Kryptonian and kind of getting rid of his human emotions? I've seen that at least once in Smallville, and I didn't even watch all of Smallville, so it may have happened multiple times there. And I saw it once in Mark Waid's Justice League run. Well, that happens for the first time here, or at least the first post-crisis time. I don't know if it happened any pre-crisis, I kind of doubt it, but this is the first time it happens in the post-crisis comics, and it's very interesting to see it happen over an extended period of time, because all of the other times that I've seen it, like in Mark Waid's run, where it was part of a larger thing, where there were other characters who were also acting weird, and in Smallville, it was just a one-episode thing. Usually it doesn't last very long, but this, like I said, it's like 6 issues long, and we slowly get to see Clark losing his more human side, and by the end of the book, he's very much talking like a Vulcan. He's saying, well, it was logical for me to try and kill Draga because that's what he wanted, and I didn't want him to interfere with my mission, so I was going to kill him. We get to see him saying stuff like that, and you might read this and you might think, well, Superman doesn't really act like Superman. I don't really like that. And there's a foreword at the beginning of this book by Roger Stern where he says that's kind of the point. It is that Superman is acting very different here, and you get to see why he's acting different. So by the end, even if you don't like that he's acting like a jerk, you can at least see that it's not his fault that he's acting like a jerk. But this is, as far as I know, the first time that we get to see his fully Kryptonian heritage trying to ruin his life and turn him more into a full-blown Kryptonian. And that's interesting to see. Like I said, this plays with a lot of elements that we hadn't seen in a really long time, or we hadn't seen ever before this book. For example, the Fortress of Solitude, that was always in the Arctic before Crisis on Infinite Earths. This is the first time that we get to see it post-Crisis in the Arctic. Superman is talking about how this will be a good place for him to unwind and kind of use as a headquarters when he's not in Metropolis. And it kind of gets trashed at the end of this book, but as we know, the Fortress is a big part of the Superman mythos even, today. So I feel like, I'm not sure when it happens, but pretty soon after this, I'm pretty sure that Superman continues using the Fortress. But we also get to see Jimmy Olsen going on on his own little side adventure, which isn't entirely wrapped up in this book. I'm assuming it's wrapped up shortly after this, and I don't think I have that book where that subplot is wrapped up. But we find out that Jimmy Olsen's father was a government agent and was somehow wrapped up in the Evil Factory, which was run by Mockery and Simeon. Those were two dark side agents, and we find out that Jimmy's parents are somehow wrapped up in all of that, and Jimmy is looking for them. That's kind of interesting. Sometimes I like the Fourth World stuff, sometimes I get really burnt out on it. I would have really liked to have seen some modern Jimmy Olsen working with the Fourth World stuff, and the Cadmus stuff that was kind of involved in all that too, because he goes and he finds Guardian. I would have really liked to have seen more of that, because I like seeing Jimmy Olsen wrapped up in the Cadmus stuff and the clones and all that kind of stuff, because originally Jack Kirby's Fourth World first appeared in a Jimmy Olsen comic. So fun little fact for you, but we don't get to see a whole lot of that here, but we get to see a little bit of it. Speaking of this being a sequel to Superman Exile, we get to see a little bit more of Morgan Edge and Intergang. Not much more. We just kind of get a reminder that this is what's going on with Edge. He's currently being investigated. He's in a continuous trial right now, so he's trying to lay low with Intergang. So this book, I want to say, it's really interesting to get to see some of these elements appear for the first time, or appear for the first time in the post-crisis continuity. And I think it's a really good story, but like I said, if you want to see Superman acting like Superman, then this is not going to be a story that you're going to enjoy very much, because at times he acts like a big, huge jerk throughout most of this story. But I personally really enjoyed it, and I think that you guys might as well. So I would suggest that you check out Superman Eradication, especially if you like some of the Superman books from the 90s that you're probably more familiar with, like The Death of Superman. If you like those stories, then you'll probably like this, because it's by the same creative team, and it's stuff that will later be played with again in The Death of Superman. So that's all that I have to say about this book. I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different kind of review. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.